This is not home. Grace and peace, everybody. Welcome to Sabbath School Study Group. This is the last part of this 5-part series, looking at Esther and Mordecai, and we wrap it up remembering this is not the end. In the miracle of what God does through Esther and Mordecai and his people's testimony and faithfulness, when we think about this, it's a beautiful story. But we have to remember, technically, historically, who they were. That's what makes the story more amazing, but don't miss the point. This was not their home. Many chose to go back to what was considered their homeland, back to Jerusalem and the surrounding areas. But when Esther and Mordecai were where they were captives, in a very real sense, in a foreign land. When we look at ourselves, we got to remember, as grateful as I am for this country, as grateful as I'm sure you are for where you may be living, this is not home. This is lowercase h-o-m-e. Our heavenly home, capital H-O-M-E, is where we're trying to go. And it's with this in mind that we can have a perspective in our witness. See, in Daniel chapter 1, verses 2 to 3, going even back there, the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into the hand of the king of Babylon, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the King Nebuchadnezzar, spake to Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuch, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. So before Esther and Mordecai come on the scene, in Esther under the Medo-Persians, back there in the captivity of Daniel, and the Hebrew boys, and the people of God there, they were able to shine a light in a foreign land. So bringing this back to the point of us being a witness, where we work, where we go to school, it could be as secular as all get out. It could be as public as it could possibly be. But even there, God can shine a light. In fact, that's why we're there. Perhaps that's why he's called us there. In this darkness now, the Lord is waiting to radiate righteousness through righteous people. In Esther's story now in chapter 2, verse 5 to 6, remember, they were in Shushan the palace. There was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who was a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jeconiah, the king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. So this is a continuation of what we just read back there in the book of Daniel, in the transition from Babylon now to the Medo-Persian. This was still the same people, the same captives, just under a different captain, under a different king. And Mordecai was one of those captives. But even in his captivity, he had the righteousness of God on him. The glory of the Lord was shining on him, and that light now was able to be a ministry to Ahasuerus, the Medes, and the Persians. Not just with Mordecai. This same Mordecai in verse 7, he brings up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter. For she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. What a mighty God we serve. Not only, talk about a stacked deck, Esther is not just a captive, but she's also an orphan. And she's being raised by a cousin. Mordecai he does not have his own wife, but he's now a single father, and he's trying to raise up a girl. Don't tell me what the grace of God cannot do. God has a plan. God has an intent. His plan was that his people not go into captivity. It was our rebellion. It was the rebellion in Jeremiah that brought on now this captivity. But even in their rebellion, and even though they were far from God's original intent, it does not limit God's capacity to design. Say that again. Even though we might not be living right now in God's original intent, God's original design, that does not silence his paintbrush. That does not dry out his pen. It does not limit the all-creating and all-loving God from even in an unideal situation to bring about his ideal, to bring about his original intent, to bring about his plan. That's why he's the restorer. That's why he's potter, and he says, I can't make that vessel what it was, but I can make even something better. He does this through Esther. He does this through Mordecai to show us today. The situation may not be ideal, but God has not abandoned it. And even though they were captive, it does not mean that they were not called. You and I, today, right now, we're in a strange land, but we're not going to be here forever. But the only people who make the decision to go to that other land, remember, this ain't home. But I'm going home. This is not our home. God has not called us to make earth into heaven. That's his job in Revelation chapter 21 and 22. Our job is to declare his kingdom, the kingdom of grace that's been ushered in through Christ. Because that same Christ, for those who are faithful, for those who stand in the boardroom, and those who fall back even when they're afraid, we very, very soon will go home where we belong.